want to welcome back our residents for tuning in to Town Manager's Corner. It's Michael Maresco. I am the Town of Abington's new Town Manager. And as you have seen from some of my other segments, I am doing a show. I'm inviting our key department heads in to talk about their department, talk about the great job and great programs that they provide for our community. And we're also in a financial crunch. You've heard a lot of discussion. I know residents tune into the Finance Committee. We're putting forth an override. It's a revenue shortfall. I want to be clear that residents understand that. It's not a miscalculation of dollars or mismanagement of finances. It's rarely a revenue shortfall. We're just not getting enough revenue in. As folks know, we operate under Prop 2.5. That means that each year you only can add 2.5% to the levy. With that being said, 80% of our budget is driven by personnel. That's what makes local government so unique. You know, we have real bodies when you go to town hall, you go to the police department, fire department, the library, any of those key departments, or you call, there's real people to answer that. But we're struggling as a community, and no different than, I think there's somewhere between 40 and 60 communities out there right now that are looking at potentially doing an override because they're in the same boat that we are, and that there's a problem of the revenues. And so when people go to town meeting, and I want to remind people of that date, Monday, May 4th is town meeting. What's a little unique this year is that we're showcasing two versions of the budget. One version of the budget is a level service budget, and the other service is level funded. Now, when you hear level funded, right away in your mind you say, well, okay, well, that's good. You're going to get the same amount of money that you had the previous year. Well, it's really not, because that's actually a cut in the budget. Because what that doesn't take into consideration, doesn't take in the collective bargaining agreements, and doesn't take in the rising cost of health care, the cost of our pensions, utility, gas, goods that we purchase, any of that stuff. That's why the second version, and it will require the override, that is the level service budget. That is the budget that will factor in those additional dollars to close that revenue shortfall. And the revenue shortfall, and I've mentioned this and I'll mention it again, is $3,413,020. In just a few minutes, I'm being joined by Chief John Bonney, who is the chief of the Abington Police Department. And his department is struggling with a potential cut of $875,486. And when we do the question, like I've done with other department heads, we'll get into how that impact will affect his department and his ability to keep Abington, its residents, and its children safe. So that's why it's important that residents, we're going to have information up on the town website. All of the financial data will be up there. We're going to have stuff. There's a box that says town meeting. Click on that box. The relative documents, such as the warrant, the annual report, any other stuff that you need. All the financial data and the budgets in their entirety will be there. If you want older financial data, it's available at the town accountant's website. And then, so May 4th, mark your calendar, 7 o'clock, Abington High School. And then the override special election will take place on May 16th at the Beaverbrook School. The polls are open from 8 to 6. And I also want to remind folks about the annual town election, which is coming up on April 25th. You also vote at Beaverbrook, and it's 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And in a very relatively short period of time, you'll be able to go to Town Hall and see Leanna Barber in the clerk's office, and you will be able to, no excuse absentee balloting, and you'll be able to vote on both of those elections. They will have the ballots there. So I've been talking quite a bit, so now I would like to welcome Chief John Bonney here, joining me today. Chief, thank you and welcome.
Thank
you. I know you've only been here relatively short period of time, but you've been very impactful on your department. within the community, within the schools. When I was coming here first as the interim and then as the permanent town manager, I was amazed at the programs that you've put together in such a short period of time, as well as really being part of the social fabric with your department. I got to see firsthand the Christmas and the generosity of the department, being at the Walmart and helping out with Santa Claus and, all of those great things. So I want to thank you for that. I'm enjoying my time here working closely with you. And as you heard me mention, I'm very concerned about the potential effect that these cuts would have on your department. How I would maybe like to start, Chief, is maybe you could share with folks. I know people know a lot about you, but hopefully there are new people tuning in that may not know a lot about you. Maybe you could just, sort of give us a little of your background.
Certainly.
Talk about some of your priorities and why you like being in Abington.
Yeah, I think between the two of us, I'm still new, but I'm the grizzled old veteran here in Abington between the two of us. So I do want to thank you for your accessibility in the fact that no matter when I call you, you pick up the phone and always have an answer for me. And it's been a pleasure working with you, and I do welcome you to this town. And as the longer you're here, you're going to realize what an incredible community this is. So a little bit about myself. I am coming up on almost 24 years on the job. My Deputy Chief, Jeff Postel, just celebrated the other day his 2-year anniversary. I'm still shy of that a little bit.
Right.
But I feel like I've been here forever. This place quickly became home for me. It's not to say I didn't really enjoy my time in Stoughton, but this new journey that I've been on, the town has been overwhelmingly receptive to a lot of change. We've implemented a lot of change. When I first started here, I met with the group, and I told them that we were going to sort of crawl, walk, and run, get to know each other, and that didn't really pan out because we've been sprinting at full speed just about since I got here, and it has less to do with me and my presence here in Abington, and more to do with the group that we have over on Central Street and their willingness to just do whatever we need to get done. And they're just an unbelievable group.
They really are. I mean, I will tell you, Chief, the one thing I was impressed with is how they all participate. Not just the great job that they do making sure our residents and our children are safe, but I think being part of the community, the SRO offices that we have at the school, and then their participation in these other local, more cultural type events that we have in town here for our residents. The other thing that I find significant, and our residents should feel really good about this, is that our police officers wear cameras. And that's enormous because a lot of other towns, they fight it. And what's so important about that is that it protects the officer. And, our officers are so well trained, and we're going to get into that shortly because we're very fortunate here in Abington that we have so many young new officers. We just recently got out of civil service. We could talk a little bit about that. But those are some of the things. The cameras, it cuts both ways. If there's an issue with an officer, leadership will catch that. But there were a lot of times, and domestic calls are probably the most dangerous to police officers. It's a husband and wife, girlfriend and girlfriend, boyfriend and boyfriend, whatever. And there's an altercation. The police get there. They try to de-escalate the situation, and suddenly the couple turn on the police officer, and they're making all of these outlandish charges against the officer, and now the officer doesn't have to worry about that because the cameras here. Maybe Chief, if you could just expound upon that just a little.
Yeah, the cameras. We came to an agreement. We got a grant for the cameras, so the cameras cost the Abington residents exactly $0. It all came in on grants. And then as add-ons to the cameras, we got some grants for redaction, and because every bit of our camera is a public record. Every bit of footage is a public record. but public records get redacted. And it's very difficult. You know, it's easy to take a Sharpie and redact something on a paper, but
Right.
when we're redacting camera footage anyway, there's a lot. There's a lot that goes into it, whether it's, you know, a computer screen in an officer's cruiser or, you know, a medical issue. All that stuff has to get redacted before it gets sent out to the public. And so that's the grant is a great savings to us because it's about $20,000 a year. So the other thing that we have, and we're sort of piloting this right now, is translation, real-time translation. So, you know, the members of our, say, our Brazilian community or Hispanic community or Haitian community who cannot speak to us in English, we can actually communicate through our body cameras in real time, and it's just incredible. As far as you know, what's been captured, I think we all saw Sergeant Mark Watt and his incredible heroics in saving that woman's life off it was going through a mental health crisis.
Right.
I think there were two outcomes. Sergeant Mark Watt was going to save her life or die trying. Right. And it was very impressive. And then another side, there was a gentleman who was stopped in a car stop that told one of our officers that he wanted to file a complaint with me regarding the car stop. The officer was proactive about it. He came into my office. He said, "Chief, I want to show you this. It was a very unhappy customer." And I watched the whole interaction. Our officer handled himself incredibly professional, and it turns out the gentleman was lying to try and get out of a ticket. And so I spoke to that gentleman and informed him that I watched the video, and he in fact lied, and my officer did nothing wrong. So it's proven to be invaluable to us.
So they work.
They
Absolutely.
work. Yes.
No, that's great. Now, you know, we can't say enough about Sergeant Mark Watt, and really, you know, being able to catch that. It was first thing in the morning to see that, you know, jumping out of his cruiser and saving that person's life. That's incredible. And I know the Select Board is going to be honoring him, presenting a heroic citation to him Monday, this Monday coming up, March 30th at 10 o'clock in the Select Board chamber. So we're going to be doing that.
Yeah, I look forward to that.
No, absolutely. Chief, I wanted to maybe, sometimes, you know, when people think of police, they think just sort of, not all, but some people sort of one-dimensional. It's really law enforcement, but it's really law enforcement, education, it's traffic stops, it's security for big events. We have the St. Patrick's Day parade coming up, a number of activities as we go into the warmer spring and summer months, and there's so many other aspects of the job that the men and women that wear the badge are required to do. Maybe you could just sort of a general synopsis of other things you get into.
Yeah, it's the service side of our job that I find most impressive about the Abington Police Department. No matter what cause is going on around town, we're involved in it. When we had the massive storm a few weeks ago, we're working with the senior center to provide a warming station, and we went through there, and the Public Works did an amazing job keeping that lot clear. But we did notice that, like, the doors to the building were all snowed in. So because we have such a full staff right now, and we're full staff, we were able to take a group of officers that were working shift. You know, we have an ATV with a plow on it. We have a snow blower. We have like a battery-operated snow blower. And within 45 minutes time, we got the sidewalks, all the doors shoveled out, the fire hydrant shoveled out, and it was probably the most fun I've ever had shoveling in my life. It was an amazing moment. And those sort of little connections that we have, we do an awful lot, and I give a great deal of credit to Deputy Chief Postel and SRO White and Morgan. They do an awful lot of things to sort of humanize the badge, because underneath all of this is a dad, a mom, a brother, a sister. We like going to ball games. We're just like anybody else out in the public. And I think that gets lost a little bit And this group in particular is a fairly young group. At almost, I'll be 50 next month. I'm the third oldest person in that building, and that's in uniform anyway.
Right, right.
And that's something. You know, you compare this to other departments. You know, Sergeant Mark Watt, he's getting ready to retire in August, and I think that the person with the next most years of service is at like 12. And that's unreal. That's incredible. And so we're just human beings. You know, I mean, we try and get out in the public as much as we can between, you know, the Christmas toy drives, which was just spectacular. I thought last year's was incredible. This year's was with the helicopter, and that
It
was
really was
not
unbelievable.
any cost to the taxpayer
No.
at all. For the helicopter, I every time I talk about
I
how
know all
awesome
the
that
kids
was.
loved it. I know
Yeah,
all the kids
it was
loved it.
unreal, and
Yeah.
I don't know any other town like.
Right.
I don't want to take anything away from any other police
No,
agency,
no.
but like for the staff that we have, the size that we do, the impact that we have in the community is just so measurable, and it's awesome.
You know, it's great having the conversation with you because, you know, it gives people an opportunity to see, you know, just, you know, you show up every day. This is, you know, what I see. I call you. You're always excited, motivated, ready to do anything. Whatever there, you're ready to go.
Aside from my family, my favorite topic of conversation are my colleagues,
No, absolutely.
and that's just because of what they put out.
No, we're very fortunate. Maybe before we get into, and I ask you the big question is, the $875,000 and change cut. Last year, the police department was able to do something that they hadn't been able to do in a long time, and that is that we were able to attract these young officers to come here, and they chose to come here, which is somewhat different. We're non-civil service now. Maybe if you could talk a little bit about that briefly, and then having this new 6 or 7 officers being here.
Yes, I would love to. Up until this year, the most important vote that probably has ever impacted the Abington Police Department was that of last year to leave civil service. Civil service has kind of grown tired, and it required us to hold a test once a year and pretty much only hire from residents of Abington. And the fact is, there weren't enough people signing up to take the test to become Abington police officers. For whatever reason, we didn't do any research as to why, it didn't happen. So it forced us to try and expand out, and when we expanded out, we didn't get the quality of officer that we demanded. So I knew there was a vote coming up in April of last year to leave civil service. So what we did was we took a risk. We held a non-civil service test at the end of January and another one 2 weeks later in February, in anticipation that the town would vote to leave civil service at the ballot question.
Right.
And I think we had 47 people take our test. We had the cutoff at 85. We narrowed it down to 20. People scored 85 and above. And through robust background checks and interviews and different levels, we had 7 openings. It was really 6, but we got a federal grant to hire a police officer for 3 years. So we were able to hire 7. And we got 7, not just people to fit the uniform, but just incredibly good character human beings that don't want to just be police officers, but they chose us. They wanted to be Abington police officers. Because you see, Michael, when you take a non-civil service test, you can go anywhere that has openings.
Right.
We had openings, and they wanted to come here. And they have been nothing short of incredible. They've been attentive throughout the academy. Their academy staff instructors, we were very close with them, very communicative with them. They were very impressed with our group, and they have, handled the most sensitive of calls, an attempted homicide that a few of them had responded to calls involving violence against children, to at this, at the same time, getting involved with the public relations stuff we do. They've all been down the senior center and had coffee with a cop and sat with our seniors and gotten to know them. And it's just, they are Abington police officers. They are what drives us. And it's a group of 7 men and women that are just, I love having them around.
Good. I appreciate that, and we love having them, which is a really good segue in, because we have some challenges to overcome. And, one of the reasons, I want to have the key department heads in, public safety is big, fire and police, to make sure that we're protected. The financial situation's hitting pretty hard. The police department, we're looking potentially at $875,486. Can you get into the people that are tuning in, and can you talk about that impact, and how many offices and where the cuts would go, and who will be affected?
Certainly. So the main reason why this number is so big is last year we had open positions and we filled them. But when I gave my level service number, every department was asked to provide a level service number. I included the 7 that we were going to hire because those were empty positions. But unfortunately, those didn't get funded. So we at the Abington Police Department didn't really receive a level service budget. So we were deficient the cost of those officers going into this year. It was explained to me that we could offset it through free cash transfers afterwards, and I received permission from a previous administration to go forward with the hiring, because I could have stopped it before they went to the academy. They were all hired and given conditional offers, but they hadn't gone to the academy yet. But we would have been in a financial mess that way. So that's why, like, those positions were open. We didn't add to our minimum staff. I need to really truly stress this. We didn't add to our minimum staff. We just filled to minimum, and that's what we have going on right now. And so if the override fails, we're going to lose 40% of our entire staff on Central Street, from sworn officers to civilians. That includes 6 police officers. It includes our firearms, our part-time firearms records clerk, our public records clerk, which is a full-time position, our court prosecutor, which is a part-time position filled by a retiree, and our evidence officer, which is also a part-time position filled by a retiree. Those last 2 positions I just talked about, the evidence officer and the court prosecutor, in every other agency around, in every agency out of Brockton District Court, is filled by a full-time sworn police officer. So our department has already been operating as lean as we possibly could go. I was shocked when I arrived here at APD that we had part-time civilian non-sworn staff filling those positions, because that just doesn't happen. Those 4 positions, and there are more civilian positions I'll lose, those 4 positions have to be filled. We don't have a choice. We have to fill those. So I have to, by contract, I can't keep civilian staff in lay off sworn staff. So the whole civilian staff would have to go, with the exception of the executive assistant to the chief, who she pays all the salaries and the bills and all that. So she would stay. So it's a total of 16 people, 16 moms and dads, 16 real people, not just faceless people that just come off the tax rolls. These are real people with bills and homes and families that they are providing for, that we'll lose. That's 40% of our staff. It's astronomical.
And that will put the department back to where it was before, in a deficit, not having the minimum complement of men and women in the police.
So on the patrol staff, the 4 positions that I said I have to fill would then be backfilled. We'd lose 6 police officers, bringing us to 14. Then I'd have to take 4 police officers and put them on civilian positions. Now, I'd have to bargain that, because that's outside of the union work. right? So there would be an increase in pay to the officer doing that. There'd have to be some sort of compensation there, because it's not their work. And then that leaves 10 patrol officers to cover all of the shifts. So we would not be able to staff SROs in any way, shape, or form. So we would just have every single shift, 3 shifts a day, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It's 2 patrol officers and 1 sergeant. But having 10 patrol officers doesn't allow for time off. Like, we'd have open shifts, right? And it's the same problem that we were in when I arrived. We had 10 or 11 officers. So the override ask is about $865, $875-ish. And basically the cost for the override failing would be north of $2 million when you account for sick time, vacation time, training, mandatory training, court time. Last year we had 27 weeks of family medical leave. Because I have a young department, they're starting families, and they stay home when babies are born and things like that. Right. And they get 12 weeks of FMLA, and that's a huge cost. And so in order to mitigate that, we have to allow sergeants and lieutenants to work patrol shift overtimes. And my lieutenant's overtime rate, because that's north of $100 an hour. Right. So
that's the piece that people forget, is that overtime with public safety and police in particular, fire department and police. We have to cover those shifts. People have to be there. We have to have police on the street. We have to have police in the police station. We have to have police when we have the parade. For security. Today, everything is security driven. And just because we cut those bodies doesn't stop the financial cost. No. In fact, the cost will go up for that very reason that you stated, is that you have a older, more tenured, higher up the pay scale, and we're going to be reliant on those individuals, and we have to pay the overtime, the time and a half on a higher salary.
These are very, very conservative numbers. But open shift, when I say open shift, that means there's no one scheduled to fill that patrol officer shift. Right now, with the minimum staffing that we've been able to hire to, we have 0 open shift overtimes. So I'll give you this number first. In a small sample size that we have been at full staff, basically started January 15th of this year. So I compared January 15th of this year to this date today to January 15th of last year to this date of last year.
Right.
And we have been able to reduce just patrol overtime alone, 71%.
Wow.
In that 3 months. In that same 3 months, we have increased our proactive motor vehicle enforcement by 38% and increased our arrests by 37%. So we're increasing our service. We're making this town safer at less of a cost. And just the conservative numbers to fill the open shift overtime, based on the average overtime that we're taking, is $67 an hour. That's the average overtime cost between lieutenants and lowest tier patrol officer. The open shift overtime would cost us $501,745. And again, that's a conservative number. Right. Just to cover vacation time, it would be an additional $247,864. So right there, we're almost at the override ask.
Right.
Then we need somebody on the desk 24 hours a day, because we have cameras in cells to pay attention to. We have somebody monitoring the cameras in the school at all times. Our flock cameras are monitored. And so the desk coverage itself would cost $590,600. So that total is about $1.3 million. What I did not include in that is sick time, mandatory training for firearms and tasers and CPR every year that we have to do.
And we have to cover those.
Have to. in-service training, and then, like I said, last year in FY26, we had 27 weeks of FMLA. Also last year, we had 2 sergeants get injured. One on duty, one off duty. One was attacked violently by a person on a call, and another one was an off-duty injury. Very significant. That cost us, with those 2 sergeants being out, $78,000. I don't know where that money comes from.
Right.
Maybe we find the end of the rainbow in a pot of gold, but those are real numbers. And that's not including the $33,000 or so that would cost for each person to get for unemployment.
Right.
These numbers are massive, and I do understand that I'm asking for a big number. I get that, but the average cost per homeowner is about $14 a month to keep the staff that we have. I'm not adding staff. It's just to keep the people that we have, where I've already said we've reduced overtime costs for patrol officers by 71% while raising our proactive motor vehicle enforcement by 38%.
No, I mean, I think you did a really great job of explaining that, because that is the whole point is, we lose those officers, we're not able to fill those shifts, we're still incurring cost, because it's imperative that we have a police presence. And you did bring up the unemployment, and I had mentioned this, I think, when I've had other department heads in here. Not only are we talking about the 6 officers, 7 administrative, and 3 part-time, well, when you talk about the full-time officers, that's $33,100 per person, additional costs, and that's the unemployment insurance that we're required to pay. And that's a Commonwealth requirement. That's not a town requirement. So that's on top of these other charges that we would have. But, we're here today talking to Chief Bonney, and we're talking about the potential cut if the override doesn't pass, $875,486. That will have a horrific effect on the police department, with the potential reduction of 6 officers, 7 administrative people, and 3 part-time people. And I can tell you, it would be terrible if the override doesn't pass on May 16th. The chief will be forced to make these cuts, and that's actually that will set the department back, and it would be much harder to get folks, I think, to come here, to get other officers. So we're going to have to hope that the citizens recognize this and they come out. And I think everyone understands, and Chief, you have a family, you do food shopping, everything's on the rise. Your car insurance, house insurance, your food shopping, things like that. But, government's no different. We have to account for that. And I want to commend the police department, like I commended the fire department. They've done an outstanding job of getting grant money. That's the way that we're able to reduce and then add other services and cover other programs, by being aggressive with grant money, because somebody else is paying for that. I guess the question I want to ask is, how do the officers feel? Are people still upbeat about being here? Are people concerned? That kind of thing.
There's definitely the concern in the building is palpable. We've had a number of conversations with our staff, and I've said to them, you let me worry about this issue, and you concentrate on doing the best job that you can, because this isn't a job where you can go out on the street and not be in the right frame of mind.
Right.
It's just not. And I am amazed at their ability to just compartmentalize what's going on and what they do out on the street. It's incredible. The progress that we have made in the last year and a half between becoming reaccredited, which was a massive, massive undertaking, and I say it's 7 new officers. It's really 10. The day I started in Abington, we had 3 brand new officers start the police academy. We had the same exact start date. So we have 10 new police officers here that didn't work here before. And they've just really taken to the town, and they've really done everything they can to stay involved, not just in calls for service, but out in the public. We're a very forward-facing agency. It is all hands on deck, and we talk about the St. Patrick's Day parade in a couple of weeks, and I can't wait for you to see this. Admittedly, I've never been a big parade guy. I haven't. I feel in my last community we had a parade for every event in the world, and it drove me crazy. The first time I saw this parade was last year, and I was sold. But forever, as long as anybody on our department can remember, we had to bring outside departments in, Rockland, Whitman, to help out just doing traffic. And for the first time ever, we don't have to do that. It's only going to be APD officers out in the traffic posts and in the command post. But we're also bringing additional help through MetroLec.
Right.
And that's another thing, too. I tell you what, for a small department, what MetroLec is a regionalization of police resources between SWAT, critical incidents, stress management, tactical mountain bike units, Metro MOP unit, which is motorcycles. We have Lieutenant Canada is involved in the SWAT. He was involved in a very high stakes issue last night, and he was involved in the search for that young boy in Marshfield earlier in the week. We have Officer Walsh is on the Metro motorcycle team. Lieutenant Simmons and Sergeant Gillen are on the critical stress management team. And I believe he is also on the motorcycle team. And then we have Sergeant Feely and Officer Resendez on the mountain bike team. We may have to pull them from those if we lose this. And by pulling those resources out of Metro, because I can't offer up overtime for them to go to other communities when we're starving for overtime here, we might lose the ability to be a part of the Metro community. And just for the parade alone, they're offering out at no cost to Abington at all. We're going to have drone services, a quick reaction gun car, and two actually.
Right.
And you won't see those; they'll be off to the side. We're going to have Metro motorcycles. We're going to have Metro bike units. We're going to have plainclothes guys mixed in. Everything that we're doing to keep this parade safe and the parade route safe. I don't know that we have that coming to us next year if I have to pull out of MetroLec.
No, that's. I'm glad you brought that up, because those are resources that we're able to tap into. We're able to tap into it because we also provide bodies to that.
Yes.
It's like mutual aid. You know, if there's a catastrophe in Rockland, they're going to call, and it's police oriented. They would call Abington to ask for backup. You know, if there's a fire in another community, they'll be calling Abington, and when they have a fire, we have to be able to have bodies to respond, or we lose that reciprocity, and that would be a shame. That would be. That's why it's good to have these conversations, because, unless you're an integral part of the police department or any one of our other departments, you don't know all of the pieces that go on. That's why, it's important that people hear firsthand from our very able and capable department heads, and they understand, with the cost. There's a cost to everything, not just a financial cost. There's a mental cost for, I'm sure, with the potential of the $3,413,020. You tell people that our budget's predicated on about 80% of labor, real people. We're talking about husbands and wives and parents, and the hardest part of my job is to tell somebody that we don't have the money for them, or we're going to have to defund their position or something like that. And and for you, it's even more impactful because now with that change in civil service, and I know from you and I having conversations, officers that know that potentially their job could go, there may be another opportunity in another community for them, and they can now take that opportunity, and I believe they don't need your sign off. Where before they did.
Certainly. So leaving civil service is, like I said, it was a blessing. But there is a risk too. You know, it's been said, I believe it was Lieutenant Canada who told me a story, that he was in a class one time, and someone in that class said, if you made a police department made up of all the people that left Abington PD, it might be the best police department in the state. And just for example, Chief Kane from Hanover started in Abington. There's a sergeant, I believe, in Bridgewater. I do understand what people are saying, but I would put our group up against anyone. And the fact is, we've had a lot of people leave Abington, and since I've been here, we haven't had anybody leave that wasn't scheduled to leave. We had 2 leave since I got here, but they were scheduled to leave before I started. And I'm not taking credit for that. I'm not sitting here taking credit for that. But what we have done as a group is build a culture of, 1, accountability and camaraderie. Right. And we back each other up, and it's a good place to work. And frankly, if we lose all of these officers, that doesn't mean the 10 patrol officers that are staying around are gonna stay, because there's gonna be so much forced overtime that they may not be able to get to spend as much time with their families as they would have. And if they wanted to leave, I can't stop them. So there could just be a mass exodus like there has been in the past in Abington, and that we've been able to kind of stop. And because people want to work here, they want to be here. Right. You know, the deputy and I have both had conversations where other departments have reached out, members of other departments have reached out, asking if we were taking laterals, and I'm so proud to say, no, not right now. Right. We're at full staff. I don't have any positions. So not only do people want to stay, but others want to come here. And it's a great credit to the men and women in the building, and the citizens of the town, and our elected officials that support us. We feel very propped up and supported here. And like I said, leaving civil service was probably the biggest ballot initiative this department's seen. May 16th is going to be the biggest ballot initiative this department's ever seen. This is going to be a make or break for us. We've had so much progress over the last 1.5 to 2 years, and to see it all just get whisked away would be devastating.
I share those sentiments with you, Chief. I think myself it would be devastating, because I think the town has made some great strides in really moving ahead in education and the services we provide at the senior center, services we provide at town hall, police and fire. And if we're not able to get the override, if our citizens feel that they can't afford segments, either pieces or all of it, it will set the town back, and it will change the dynamic that's there right now. And it will, people will stop looking at us as a community that they want to go to. And, lost talent that we potentially could lose out on will go to some other town. And that's why I think the education piece is so important. So we'll have to continue to educate. I want people to be fully educated, so that when they go voting on May 16th and they show up at town meeting on the 4th, that they understand what's at stake with level funded versus level service, and why we're asking. And we take this very seriously. No one wants to have to ask for money. I have a family, I pay taxes. You have a family, you pay taxes. We don't live here, so we don't pay taxes to Abington, but nevertheless, we know the importance and the struggle it is to maintain a local budget, let alone department budgets and town budgets. So we understand those challenges. But it's our job, you as a department head and myself as a town manager, to make sure that our residents are educated, and they know, if they vote for it, this is what they're going to get. If they vote against it, this is what they're going to get. And we want to make sure that people have the full effect of what's happening. And that's what I want to utilize the Manager's Corner for. Is I want to bring our department heads in to talk about this. And then we're going to have these up on the website so that people can watch them at their leisure. And, you know, if someone right now is watching and they see it and want to make sure that your neighbors watch it, we want to spread the word. We want to make sure that, you know, people know April 25th there's a town election, May 4th there's town meeting, and May 16th there's the override. And we just, you know, on the town website there'll be more information. There'll be in-depth information on the police budget. And I want to commend the chief because he had a roundtable meeting, I think it was not this week, last week, that I attended. You know, we had maybe 15 people in, all segments of the population, and Chief went through and really did an in-depth explanation of his budget. And he talked about a lot of the key topics that we talked about tonight: leaving civil service, being able to attract all of these young officers. And then he talked about the sad effect if the override doesn't pass. So we're going to do everything we can to educate folks to make sure that by the time they get to town meeting, they understand what's at stake. And certainly when they go vote for the override on the 16th of May, they understand.
We've made a great deal of effort to try and save money in other ways. We don't purchase our cruisers anymore, we lease them, and that is a massive cost savings to the capital budget. We got a new phone system recently that's going to save us so much money that we were able to afford to buy every sworn officer a department-issued cell phone, and that's really, really important given some of the high-profile cases that have made its way through the courts and other communities where cell phones and personal use cell phones came into play. And it allows us to sort of allow our officers to take pictures of minor motor vehicle crashes and things like that, where normally we would call out BCI for those photographs. Officers were always reluctant, and understandably so, to use their own phone to do anything for work. And now they have this, as well as the body camera. And I do want to point out real quick, we do utilize the services of BCI, which is done through the Plymouth County House of Corrections. And that has been significantly slashed. They've laid off 6 of their 16 officers. Some of them have already gone into other departments. So we're going to be asked to be able to pick up more of that slack. And if we reduce our staff by 40%, it's going to be very difficult. I don't want to say to the town that we can't protect them if this happens. I'm never going to be that sky is falling guy. But our services are going to be significantly decreased by, like, all of the public outreach would have to go away because we just couldn't afford it. The deputy chief likes to say that we have to be good stewards of the budget, and we very much are. And I want to say that's just not exclusive to our department. I know you held your department head meeting the other day, but since I've been here in those meetings, each department head likes to really, really boast about the things that they've done to save money, save the taxpayers money. This is a group effort amongst all of us department heads, and it's one of the synergy between the departments is I think really unique in this community compared to other communities where they're kind of battling each other over money. We're not pitting each other against. We all have needs, and I would never, ask somebody to fund us, but not something else. And I think that's really unique in this town.
You touched upon something that's significant, and my professional career is we're one team.
Yep.
We're all in it together. We suffer the wins together. We suffer the losses together. It was, that was my first department head meeting as the official town manager, and to see the synergy in the room with those departments, to see the relationship. It's great to see the great relationship that you have with the fire chief and the police and fire getting along. That doesn't happen in a lot of communities.
No, it doesn't. We're very, very, I can't wait to get new neighbors. I'm very excited about this.
Yes.
Our cross-training for certain things will greatly improve. Our relationship with the fire department is unbelievable, and it's a great credit to them.
No, absolutely.
As
And
well.
you know, our other department heads are looking to save money, applying for grants, all of that. You know, our department heads, they go above and beyond. And I think, you know, a lot of that is they love the community. They love their community. Even if they don't live here, they love working here. And people do that. You know, we've talked about the override. I do want to hold this up. This is what the override ballot will look like. There'll be yes and no for each of those. So, well, we hope that people go out there. I want to thank the chief for taking time out of his very, very busy schedule to be here and educate and update residents on all of the great services that that he and the men and women of the police department provide for the town of Abington.
I would like to say that we do try and be the most accessible group we possibly can. So if anybody watching has any type of follow-up questions, jbonney@abingtonpolice.org, you can reach out to me. You can call 878-3232. You want to come in and have a meeting with me, I'll never turn down a meeting with any resident, any question, anything, any way I can reach out and connect with the public to explain this, I am willing to do at any time.
Excellent, Chief. Thank you. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
And I want to thank everyone for tuning in for this segment of the Manager's Corner. And I look forward to seeing you again when we do another segment. So I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you.